Hey, hey. I love it when people applaud before I've said a single word. It's the triumph of optimism over expectation, isn't it? Well, you've probably noticed the big difference between me and the other Googlers you've met today. What is it? They're all ridiculously young, and I am the only Googler in the building who's actually called a Greygler. And and I'm very proud of this, by the way. I'm the oldest guy in the building here in London. This is absolutely true, but 3 months ago, they installed a defibrillator suspiciously close to my desk. And I sometimes like to say that the average age of my team at the zoo is 28. It was 24 till I joined. So they hired me to come in as the creative director of the zoo. And basically, the zoo is Google's creative think tank. And we exist to work with clients such as yourselves and your creative agencies collaboratively in order to be able to do kind of interesting things in the digital space. And I think one of the reasons that Google chose to hire me is because I've spent the last 30 years of my life building brands in communications. And in fact, I'm still obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with advertising in all its myriad forms. And when I'm not working for Google in my spare time, I publish a magazine called Directory, all about innovations in communications. And I'm going to keep those there because I'm going to award them as prizes, as you will see in a moment. Because I'm not going to talk at you so much today as try and get you involved to help me have a few ideas. Now, along the way, my role as a creative director has changed rather a lot. So, for example, you're a marketer. In the old days, I used to take tennis balls to all my client meetings with me, and I'd say, here, catch. And then you'd throw it back to me. Ooh, God, that's great. And I'd say, can you catch it? Can you throw it? Yeah, isn't that marvelous? And I said, that's how advertising works. I throw you a message, a simple message, and with any luck, you catch it. Where it gets a bit complicated, of course, is that if you overload your message, then, whoa, you're lucky. Quite often you catch none of them at all. And so I used to turn up at clients saying, one message, you know, per 30-second commercial, and you may possibly actually break through people's total indifference. But that has now all changed enormously. So, could I ask your name? Nikki. Right, Nikki, here's a ball for you. What I want you to do is identify somebody in the audience you know and throw the ball to them. Okay? Even if it's somebody you just met over lunch, but chuck them a ball. Very good. Okay, and I'd like you to do the same. And at the back, I'd like you to do the same. Pick the ball and start and chuck it at somebody you know, somebody you met over lunch, somebody you work with. And the same for you over there. Thank you. And over there. So identify somebody you've met or you know and throw the ball at them. Call their name out. Call the name out. There you go. Is there anybody else called Nikki in the room? Do we have any more Nickies? Thank you. There you go, Nikki. I want you to grab the ball and off we go. If you want to call somebody's name out when you throw them the ball, that really helps. If you know anybody here, there you go, you dropped it. Hey, hey, there we go. Here we go. No, you can't get away at the back. No, 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 you're sitting there all on your own. There we go. Okay. Oh. Keep throwing, keep throwing. Honestly, this is really important. This is so much more creative than just standing up. Right, there we go. Thank you. Throw. There we go. Ah, there we go. Yes, well done. Throw, 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 throw. Now, this is a metaphor for the way the internet works. First of all, I'm able to identify you through your interests, who you are, and I'm now able to throw you a message. If my message is interesting, then you're going to pass it on. If my message is boring, then you're going to pretend like the guy at the back is, that he's not really here. And when I throw him the ball, resolutely, he will ignore it. And that happens a lot of the time. But every now and then, you will share it. You will call someone's name out, and you will pass it. By the way, the last time I tried this is a bit of an experiment, the last time I tried this, we didn't get a single ball back at the end, which also tells you something about communication and the way it works. But that's what happens today. The whole digital ecosphere is about people taking your messages and passing them on if they want to. So I can't make you guys throw my balls. Some of you did. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nikki. And that's the way it works. So what I wanted to do in the next hour was work with you on reimagining a project. So Project Rebrief is something that my American colleagues created a few years ago. And they took famous campaigns from yesteryear and they asked, well, what would we do with them today? And I thought it'd be kind of quite interesting to do the same. And to do the same with a campaign I was involved in 25 years ago. And one of the reasons I chose this for today is because I think quite a lot of you were young at the time and you may remember it. I have to tell you, there are some difficulties with this commercial, but I'll tell you about those in a moment. But 25 years ago, I sat in the boardroom of an agency called Bose Missimi Pollitt with a guy called John Steele, and we were pitching for the National Dairy Council milk business. And John said to me, musingly, we had our feet up on the chairman's desk at the time, the way you do over the weekend, and he's not there. John said, of course, milk isn't a drink. It's a food. Run that by me again. Well, of course, milk isn't a drink, it's a food. What was fantastic is that that was an insight. And it was an insight that allowed us to create a completely different kind of advertising for milk. Up until then, around the world, it had been advertised as a drink, so it was kind of peppy and bright and got a lot of bottle, and there was a jingle and all the rest of it. But food is much more emotional. Food is about giving and sharing. Food is around these kind of emotional moments. And so I wrote a whole load of little, I called them stories around a milk bottle. And by the way, when I pitched, the senior client heckled me in the middle of the pitch for being pretentious. But anyway, putting that to one side, they were little stories around a milk bottle, and I'm going to show you one of them. And what I'm going to ask you to do is work with me. How would we reimagine it today? So here's a milk commercial from 1990.
Got any lemonade? If you want. Milk? Ugh. It's what Ian Rush drinks. Ian Rush? Yeah, and he said if I didn't drink lots of milk, when I grow up, I'm going to be good enough to play for Accrington Stanley. Accrington Stanley? Who are they? Exactly. Now get off. Give me some. Get off.
Poor old Ackers. Every time they play home or away, they get that. Accrington Stanley, who are they? Exactly. But do you know what I find absolutely amazing about this? At the very beginning of this, we're talking only about 4 weeks ago, when Hull played Accrington Stanley, the two commentators on Radio 5 Live went through that commercial word for word, which is kind of slightly glorious. So, my big question is, what would we do today using digital platforms in order to be able to advertise milk? So what I thought we would do in an interactive sort of session is look at what I call the new rules of communication. And I've broadened them out into 7 I's, 7 words that begin with I, and we'll go through those. And then I'm going to try and get you to generate ideas. We're going to go quite fast. And what we're going to do in the space of 45 minutes is something that would normally take at least 6 weeks. So let's see what happens. So give yourselves up to it. And with any luck, it should be quite good fun. So what do we know? Well, milk is a superior sports recovery drink. We also know that our kids are increasingly drinking fizzy drinks. And by the way, as parents, we're quite worried about it too because of obesity and because kids seem to be spending more and more time on the couch rather than taking exercise. So there is the science to prove this, that it is a better sports drink than any that exists so long up to date. And so what we want to do is to get principally, I think, dads and mums to regard milk as a healthy alternative to the isotonic sports drinks that they might be favoring by getting their kids actively involved in football. Now, like all creative briefs, any bit of this can be kind of challenged. And as we go through it, I'll give you little bits of information that may make you want to do precisely that. So what are the 7 I's? Well, these are my 7 I's. And the first is integrity. So what do you want to stand for? Is there some kind of mission that the brand can get behind? Is there a movement you want to start so that people you can follow you? You create communities like that. Integration is not about a media strategy. Integration is about people's lives. What do people do? What interests them? What are they talking about? You know, and where do they go? And does the brand have a right to be there as well? Then insight. You know, I used to be a big enemy of insights. After I was the creative director of Ogilvy and made them for 7 fun-filled years, I followed the digital loop into direct marketing. And there, I even created the positioning for Havas's direct marketing agencies around 3D creativity, data, digital, and direct. And it was about how data would throw up insights that would allow creative to become inspirational and innovative. And it was complete bollocks. You know, I hardly ever got an insight worth its salt. In fact, I mean, just before I joined Google, I was invited to, as a consultant, to help an agency pitch for a beer brand, and the consumer or the customer insight was on a Friday evening, young men often like to go out with their mates to let off steam. You didn't know that, did you? God, wow, fantastic. Anyway, I turn up at Google, and I've got to tell you, insights just pouring out of the woodwork. So we'll talk a bit about insights before. Then it's invitation. When you have an insight into customer behavior or into something about the way people are interacting with the brand, can you use that to start a conversation? In which case, what is that conversation? Then immediacy, and that is the fact that people are always on now. You know, it is absolutely incredible. I sometimes talk about Will.i.am, the rock god. And Will.i.am was talking the other day about his mobile phone. And he and the Black Eyed Peas about 18 months ago created a new album. And he was in the studio one day, and he got to hear that the record label had had a big dispute about the TV advertising they wanted to do for this. And the creative had been going backwards and forwards, and this had been stuck for about 5 months. So he pulled out his mobile phone, he shot the band, rehearsing and going through a couple of tracks. He edited it on his phone, he uploaded it to YouTube and to their website from his phone, and within 3 weeks it had 13 million views. You know, so the mobile phone is not just a receptor, it's also turning all of your customers, your consumers, into media broadcasters as well. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about innovation. And lastly, we'll take a look at what idea we've got emerging from all of that. What do you think? Possible? Possible? Yes. Thank you. Or I'll make you quack. Quack. So, integrity. What do you stand for? So, I mean, Simon Sinek and the Golden Circle is probably familiar to all of you. He talks about how Dell will tell you what they do. They make really nice laptop computers, and they're pretty cheap. But then Toshiba will tell you how they make it. They make it with Intel inside so that they're better and faster. Steve Jobs told you that he made computers so that you could change the world. And by the way, you know, Apple is now the most valuable brand on the planet. So it's about getting to the center of that circle of meaning. And by the way, when brands do get this right, some really, really interesting things happen. So Häagen-Dazs, the science behind this, they worked out that 43 of their flavors would cease to exist if honeybees ceased to exist. Because of pollination, suddenly, I've got to tell you actually, most scientists say that the human race would probably last for 3.5 years if we lost all bees. So ice cream would probably the least of our problems, but you can see where they're coming from. So they really got behind the honeybees, and there was a vanilla flavor where money went into honeybee research, and that's how a brand got to appear in front of a Senate House committee talking about apiaries, which I think is the posh word for beekeeping. But you know, here's another brand. I mean, it's just one of my favorites because it was terrific in social media. Corona, they've positioned it as a beer that's great for the beach. The trouble with beaches in Spain is that people are just polluting them with all this kind of crap. So they built 2 hotels. This one's in Madrid, and they built it out of all the rubbish left on the beaches. And the first guest in the hotel was Helena Christensen, who tweeted about her experience. And the hotel was booked up for the next 2 months, but through social media, it got something like 700 million impressions. So can you start campaigning for something? Can we, as the milk people, start campaigning for a cause? Oh, and by the way, I thought, is there anyone from Dairy Crest here by any chance? Hello? No, I know, but well done you. For the sake of argument, I've chosen Country Life for this because really there's only one branded milk in the country at the moment, which is Cravendale. But Country Life is still, I think I'm right in saying, selling 1.4 million pints a day. So milk got privatised by Margaret Thatcher back in 1993. What we're doing now is we're going to talk about Country Life milk and can they campaign? What is the issue that they could get behind? Lots of people know that goodness is good business these days, and it's not just startups who are fundamental to their criteria for starting up, have goodness at the heart of it, but also established brands. So here's American Express saying, whatever your passion project is, we'll donate money to it, and so forth. And here's the really interesting thing about all of this, integrity. You know, it's more than a corporate social responsibility platform. It actually now, in a world of oversupply and of abundancy, where people can choose, and where, by the way, young people, millennials, are amazingly brand disloyal, you have to give them a reason. And 91% of consumers in this particular research survey said that they would change a brand to a brand if it proved that it was supporting worthy causes, or causes that they thought were worth supporting. So, that's the big question. What could our Country Life milk brand stand for? Any thoughts? Farms.
Farmers and farms.
Brilliant. Yeah, it was farmers and farms. Absolutely. Farmers and farms. And there has been some fantastic stuff lately, hasn't there? Do you remember Yo Valley really differentiating themselves through, you know, being down on the farm? And anyone from Tesco? Good, because Tesco are the enemy here, aren't they? So, what else? Who else could we get behind? What sort of movement? Children's health. How would we do that? Yeah. Brilliant. Sugar is a major issue at the moment. Bearing in mind, at the back of your minds, what we've got to try and do is kind of bring this together, probably with football or sport or outdoor activity or something like that. Any other thoughts? Okay. What? The cow. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. Cows. Brilliant. I did see last year from Switzerland a fantastic, we'll just put that there for the moment on the floor, a fantastic campaign, social media campaign about cows. A Swiss brand wanted to prove that their cows genuinely were organic. So what they did is you could go online, you could choose from a herd of 12 cows, and it was the cow marathon. The first cow in its natural life to walk 26 miles was the way, and all over Switzerland, the unintended consequences. People started betting now on which of the cows was actually going to achieve it first. Fantastic. But anyway, so I think we've got a couple of things there that are really interesting. Farms and farmers who are really beleaguered at this time. We all know that actually milk is costing them more to produce than the price they're getting for it. So getting behind a sustainable milk brand is great like that. But football, at the back of your minds, how are we going to try and bring football into this? You know? Very good. Boys and girls, absolutely. Anything else? Protein. Oh, very good. Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about protein here and the nourishing qualities of milk. And how are we going to get football involved? Or sport? It doesn't have to be football.
Because after strenuous exercise, you need protein to rebuild your muscles and give you the energy back.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. We'll keep some of those ideas for moving on. So my next thing is integration. And I guess this is the kind of the kernel of what I wanted to talk about and share with you today. We've got this, I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but one of the guys in my team created Hero Hub Help as a construct to try and show that brands need more than just the traditional advert in order to be able to grow traction online. You need 3 different kinds of video, in fact. So you've got your hero content, which is when you think like an ad man, and pretty often that may be an advertisement, and you'll quite often tend to think of TrueView and putting an advertisement into TrueView, running your TV ad there instead. But at the hub, and your hub is going to be a website, a microsite, sometimes it could even be a Facebook page, or it could be a YouTube channel. But what you need is a central location, you know, to which people want to return. I mean, the trouble with most websites is that they're just completely useless. You only ever go to them to get the address or the phone number, you know, either because you want a job or you want to complain. So how are you going to create a website that people are going to want to return to, or a destination that people want to return to because they know that there's going to be something new, the content's constantly going to be updated there. So that's beginning to think, not like a marketer, but like a broadcaster, creating content. And then lastly, think like a human being. What is it that people want to know, and how can you be there to help them? You know, so for example, we were talking the other day about cholesterol. When you're 50 years old in this country, you go and see your doctor drops you a letter saying, come in for a checkup, which is required to do by law. If you're 50 years old, this is the first time you hear the word cholesterol used in your life. Again, and you go online and mean, what is cholesterol? Is it going to kill me? Oh my God, how much time have I got left? None of these questions are answered online. And so there's a real opportunity there for brands, certainly like Flora, to be answering them. So that's think like a human being. Answer what people really, really want to know. So I'll give you some examples.
A fan. Nothing much wrong there. Well, actually there is. Leaving aside blades, safety grills and limited settings, the design's hardly changed since 1890. Spinning blades chop the air, causing annoying buffeting.
Sorry, I've had enough of that. He's a genius, is James Dyson, but that's his TV commercial for the fan, and it's had 55,000 views on YouTube, and frankly, I'm amazed it's had that many. Now, on the other hand, there is this video that lasts 3 minutes, which is purports to have been created by Dyson engineers working in the lab late one night. And this has had 3 million views. And the reason is, it's interesting. Whereas the TV commercial isn't. Nobody goes online to watch a TV commercial. Nobody. Not even you. But they will watch something like this that's ingenious and clever. And I'll tell you something really, really weird about this. Have any of you got teenage children? Any? Yeah? Aren't they weird? I mean, just baffling. My son, for his 18th birthday, asked for one of these. And I have to say, that was not what I was expecting. But, you know, behind all of this, there is a really important point about what people want to watch and what they don't want to watch. What people are most interested in of all is people. So if you have a look at this. That's it. That is a bloke camcordering his wife and baby with their new Dyson fan. It's had nearly 1 million views. People are weird. You know, but on the other hand, bear in mind that they are weird and that actually people are interested in people. So what this really means is that there's an ecosystem. So you're going to put a message in front of people. You hope, and this is where I terrify creative agencies. I say to them, guys, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is your creative work has to be fantastic. The bad news is your creative work has to be fantastic. Because if it's mediocre or boring, you're just finished. No one will notice you because they don't have to. So it was put in front of me, either via share or through TrueView, but I returned to watch. I mean, if I knew that there were more of those kind of weird Dyson videos where the engineers are, if you like, torture testing their products, I would certainly go and watch them. And then help is I know what to expect and you're going to answer my questions for me. So it's an ecosystem a bit like that. I'm skipping, I'm browsing, I'm searching, and most of you will be familiar with this. Genius strategy. You know, you're never going to advertise trucks on TV because your target audience is too small. So you put Van Damme up there. That wasn't intended for truck drivers. That was intended for their kids to see. You know, 20-year-old millennials to go, Dad, because when you're a truck driver or flute owner, you're too damn busy to watch YouTube. Dad, you got to see this crazy video. So Dad's looking at that, and he notices in the right-hand corner and the right-hand margin of the YouTube page, actually there is some stuff that's really, really interesting. Much more interesting than Claude Van Damme. He goes, yeah, okay. But hey, they're talking here about my kind of stuff, fuel economy, brakes. And look at that, Volvo trucks, better grip and lower fuel consumption with the new tandem axle lift. How many of you are really rocking at the moment? Well, 68,000 people wanted to see that. They chose to see that. And this is the most amazing bit. If you've seen the Van Damme commercial, it's these trucks that use the dynamic steering technology. This has had 1.65 million views, and it's a really dull Swede talking about what it really means. Well, you know, dynamic. I can't really do the accent, but please don't hit me for casual racism. The point being is it works. So for Volvo, they will admit that last year it drove sales of trucks by 26%, which is a lot of trucks. You know, also it works here for P&Gs always. I mean, Hero Hub Help. There's a piece of Hero content. At the hub, there's a lot of kind of, if you like, program material about girls who refuse to be labeled. But in terms of help, I find this really inspiring, actually, that first period advice, 8 million young women have turned to Always for advice. And that's the way it works. So how you build a brand affinity through interweaving these different sorts of content. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to start trying to do that too with milk. Now, for me, the best place to start is not with the advert. The best place to start is actually in the middle. Think about what you would do if you were a broadcaster, if you were a program maker. So instead of being a marketer, what you are is controller of programs at BBC or ITV, or you're working for Rattling Stick or for one of these fantastic production companies. What would you do? So someone give me a subject of anything. Give me, you know, a person, a group, a noun. After school clubs. Yeah, nice one. What else? Why don't we take footballers? Because that's where we started. And what else? Countryside. Yeah? Thank you. Another one? Someone? Anyone? Just give me a subject. Footballers' children. Nice. Right. Okay. So now, let's find a different color. Orange. Da-dang. Okay, action. Doing what? Just think of an action. You know, it could be pogoing or anything. Give me an action. What? Singing. Singing. God, I thought you said singing. I mean sicking for a second. But anyway, singing, running. What? Kicking. Oh, skipping. Thank you. I'm a deaf old bugger, aren't I?
Watching YouTube.
Whoa, watching YouTube. Gaming. Good one. Right. And then lastly, surprise. Just think of something really weird. First thing that comes into your mind is, ooh, terror. All right, I'll do. Right, terror. Give me something surprising. Laughter. What else?
A peacock.
Peacocks. Lovely. Anything else? Aliens from outer space. Nice. Last one.
Cows.
What? Cows again. All right, with cows. Fabulous. Now, because what you've done essentially is create all of the wherewithal for content. So, for example, a lot of YouTube stars do that, you know, so their formats. So I don't know how many of you have seen the slow-mo guys. Well, they are the two guys who blow things up at 20,000 frames a second. And they've got 6.5 million subscribers. And brands now like to work with them. So I don't know how many of you are devotees of epic rap battles. My favorites, recent ones are Mario Bros versus the Wright brothers, which is hilarious. And last week there was, oh God, Donald Trump against, has anyone been there lately? Donald Trump, oh God, it was just, anyway. So epic rap battles. We've got George Washington against William Wallace. And basically they're kind of little models and cutouts and they rap about their place in history. You know, so here we have a format. So now what we've got, after-school clubs inspiring terror through singing. Oh, it's hilarious, isn't it? It's really, really fun. I love this. Footballers running the countryside. Actually, that is something I'd like to see because that involves cows. You know, I'd love to see some of these football stars dealing with real livestock, for example. But I mean, you know, well, skipping footballers through the countryside. Footballers' children rearing peacocks. Peacock farm with footballers' children. You know, watching aliens watching YouTube videos about cows. There's got to be a lot of cow videos. I think it's time we replace kittens. Do you see what I'm driving at? Actually, creating formats is relatively easy. You know, and here's a little technique for you to do that. So do we like any of these? Footballers, what did we say? Oh yeah, footballers in the countryside. Footballers dealing with Mother Nature, I think would be hilarious. And after footballers' children singing terribly. So we're going to get footballers' children to sing all of those football anthems for us. And we'll see what happens. Does that sound all right? Sounds a bit curious, peculiar, but we'll try and bring it all together. Right. Thank you for your format ideas. Now, insights. Again, as I say, when I first went to Google, I couldn't believe it. You know, the data. I fell in love with data. And I'll give you the first instance of that. The global category director for Smirnoff came to us, and he had been to a conference a bit like this, and you've probably all been subjected to yourselves. It's the annual, well, actually, it's every 4 years, how Nike ambushed the Olympics presentation. Anyway, he'd been subjected to this, and he came to us and he said, do you think Smirnoff could ambush the Football World Cup? And you think, well, on the surface of it, no. Football and vodka, I can see your face. You're going, no, no, that's not going to happen. But I'd hired a whole team of planners, and that's what they're there for. I said, mulch, boys, go and mulch. And they came back, having mulched and looking at the data for the previous World Cup. And the numbers were amazing. It turns out 46%, 62%, 63% of Spaniards following the Football World Cup were not football fans. Now, for me, that's a real insight because it's blindingly obvious. You know, when I ran Ogilvy, every time there was the Football World Cup, I'm mad about rugby, and I'm not even English, but I used to hire a pub, and I used to get all of my creatives in there with a lot of our suppliers, because it amused me to watch them weep as England lost yet again. And so I was not a football fan, I was a follower. But many of you will be exactly the same. Your partners or your office co-workers will be passionate about it, so you take an interest. I mean, it's only every 4 years, so phew, thank God for that. So is there an opportunity? Well, yes, there is, because the other thing about those numbers is that on aggregate, 72% of them are women. So is there an opportunity for Smirnoff? Yes, provided you don't call it football. Football is this terrible game played in Accrington Stanley, whereas football is this fabulous game played beneath azure skies, watched by girls in bikinis. I mean, what is there not to like? And so suddenly you're pitching Smirnoff around party time in different cocktails, and so you're serving up different mixes and, for each of the games and so forth. So there is an opportunity and an insight there provided by data, just provided everything. We got asked, this was only about a month ago, and this is just using Google Analytics. There's nothing special. Any one of you could have used this tool. But we were asked to have a look and help out Durex, Reckitt Bencki's brand in Italy. And one of my creative people just thought he would take a look to see if Italians search for sex. And it turns out they do. But in August, and then the rest of the year, they're British. They have no interest at all. So as a creative guy, I'm going, isn't this fabulous? You know, how are we going to get Italians to think of February as August? Or more to the point, you know, how are we going to get them to loosen their stiff upper lips? So in the context of what we're working on, milk and all the rest of it, are there any insights? Well, it turns out, oh, yes, I forgot about this. This is just amazing. I was looking at a big shampoo brand, and one of my data analysts came and told me that in the UK, a woman's relationship with her hairdresser, on average, outlasts her marriage. I'm a creative guy. I can do stuff with that. I really can. So do we have an insight in terms of milk? And I think the answer is yes, we do. There is a declining interest in football. It's associated with violence. Even in Liverpool, you know, football is losing its kind of saliency. And of course, kids are much more interested in individual sports like swimming, because of Rebecca Adlington and the Olympics, and cycling. You know, we've got all of these cyclists from Chris Hoy through to, you know, Bradley Wiggins et al. So those are their new role models. So they're much more interested in these sports than football. So maybe we should be abandoning footballers and we should be looking at another sport. And incidentally, I kind of thought this was really interesting. Because when you start looking at trending sports, there's this, do you all know what parkour is? Yeah, you do. It's basically when you just jump off cliffs and run around buildings and up the walls and over them and, God, mad stuff. But it was a piece of data that had me going, that's interesting. So what do you think? Do we have an insight? Should we abandon football? Should we stay with football and milk? Should we move to another sport? Should we start doing a campaign around parkour? Should we be the first brand to say, yes, break your neck in the stairwell of a block of flats? Well, you know what I mean. What do you think? Yeah. But do we have an opportunity to encourage them to take part? No, absolutely. That's a very good point. So what do you think? Do we have an insight? Rugby. Ah. Well, unfortunately, yes, you're right. I haven't actually looked at the numbers in the last few weeks. That is really interesting. That would be interesting. But from what I've told you so far, any thoughts? Shall we stick with football? Thank you. We got a yes from the front row. A reluctant yes, but
I was thinking if football's in decline, grassroots, perhaps you could rescue it.
Very good. Yeah, let's rescue football. Oh, and what I really like about that is it takes us back to the very beginning when I was talking about integrity. Have we got a mission? Absolutely. Let's rescue football from itself, you know, from Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini and all the others. Really, really interesting. Okay, invitation. The really, really difficult thing about everything I'm talking to you about as marketers is about how you manage a campaign. Because it used to be in the old days that you would agree with the agency what you were going to do, you'd go to Millward Brown, you'd test it, you knew what you were doing, you looked at the results, you regrouped, you either began again or you implemented changes and amends and Kolb's virtuous circle. The trouble with digital today is that actually there is no end in sight. Actually, there is no end in sight, especially if you're successful. Because normal campaign planning, you know when it's going to end. It is finite. You may then choose to reinvest in it or whatever, and I think that's the dilemma. Anyway, I've got a bit of video here of a guy called A.G. Lafley, who's the CEO of Procter & Gamble, talking to all of his global CMOs at a conference a couple of years ago.
It's an incredibly exciting time to be creating and building brands. I think we have a greater opportunity to move beyond transactions to relationships than ever before. And capturing this opportunity requires that we form higher quality relationships that are more collaborative and more giving. The more we think about relationships and the more we get experience with relationships with different consumers and different brands in different businesses around the world, the more we're beginning to understand we have to continually reinvent the way we create and build brands, and to begin to let go. We have to strike the right balance between being in touch and being in control. Now, the irony of this is the more in control we are, the more out of touch we become.
And that, I think, is the fundamental dilemma. How do you let go, knowing that actually there are trolls out there, there are people, you know, who are not going to want football rescued. You know, they're going to tell you that football is beyond rescue, you know, and that the amounts of money in it are insane and are absolutely appalling. And what they're going to do is they're going to start messing around with your communications and perverting it. And sometimes that's really, really, really hard to take. You know, and there are kind of all of these horror stories out there. You know, when Foster's tried to come up with a comedian's prize, trolls got hold of it and they got a Japanese group of actors to win it. You know, they just took over the competition and wrecked it. But they thought that was very, very, very funny, which actually it was. Not if you were the Foster's brand manager, though. And so letting go is kind of really, really difficult. And quite often what it means is that you need a different kind of marketing department to be able to answer people one-to-one, the way Zappos does. Zappos has 52 people every day who just talk to people through Twitter on one-on-one conversations and just sustain them. But for me, what it is, it's about the nature of the brief. So for me, the brief has to change in digital media. And it's not what is our proposition, because no one gives a shit. It's actually, what can we talk about? What is our invitation? What kind of conversations can we join? Or what sort of conversations can we start that other people will want to talk about? Because you can bet your bottom dollar that pretty often they're not going to want to talk about protein unless it's in the context of something that means something to them. So, in other words, bringing back greenfield sites, encouraging kids to play organised sport again, maybe fueling dreams so a kid can end up playing for Man City or Manchester United like his heroes. Maybe it's bringing them in touch with their sporting superstars, so your chance to ride tandem with Bradley Wiggins. I don't know. But certainly, what do they want to talk about? What are their aspirations, not yours? So it's not what do we want them to think, it's actually what do we want them to do? How do we want them to respond? And I don't just mean click or like, you know, or share. You know, what do we want them to do? Do we want them to start, and this is the really powerful bit, start telling stories about you and your brand and how they interacted with it. Because their stories are going to be so much more powerful than yours when they can do it. So for me, that's kind of the challenge where we start. And then lastly, fifthly, immediacy. This is all about mobile. Here are some massive numbers, and you all know that it's true. Innovation. I mean, innovation in this particular context, I split it sometimes into two, innovation and invention. But innovation is how can you do things new? How can you do things different? And again, this is really, really scary. It goes back to control. If you do something new, you have no idea if it's going to work or not. You know, this is often the big crunch, really, between creative agencies and media agencies. Because media agencies will say to you, we've seen what you did last year and the year before that, and we've taken a look at your customer journey. And actually, if you reconfigure that and you make sure that your message is at all of these key trigger points on that customer journey, we can pretty much guarantee you an ROI of 7 or 8% on your investment, you know, in 2016. And you go, whoa, that is pretty good. I mean, if I could get 7% back from the bank on my savings, I'd be going, yes. So that sounds great. Then some dumb schmuck creative guy like me comes tripping into the office. Hello, I've got a lovely idea. And you say, is it going to give me a 7% ROI? And I go, I don't know, but it's really great. You know, so there is, but on the other hand, you also are kind of educated enough to know that actually fortune does favor the brave, provided you get it right. So, I mean, again, that is where it all comes back to data and using data and insight in order to be able to do things differently. So, again, a quick little plug for my team. I mean, we help Unilever create all things hair because it turns out that there are 10 billion searches a year on hair care on Google and 8 billion a year on YouTube. And actually, it's brilliant. You watch these peaks. So just before Christmas, girls really want to know how to put nice curls in their hair because it's party time. In January, hilariously, it's bobs. They peak because it's the year of the career and taking things seriously. Now, the really interesting thing is that nobody was answering these cries for help. And so I go back to Hero Hub Help. This is a hub. It's two hubs, in fact, because by using YouTube celebrities like Zoella, you can see these videos where they're using Unilever products on their own channels as well as on All Things Hair. And by the way, they're fantastically successful. It's the fastest growing branded YouTube channel in the world. They've extended it into Malaysia, where they've also extended it into male grooming as well. So while I can't tell you what the numbers are, it's plainly working. But for Unilever, what's really fascinating about it, where it's an innovation, is that it's a cross-category play. So all of the different brand owners had to surrender money to this particular idea. This is a company called Optus in Australia, and working with the zoo there, they came up with this brilliant idea for shark detection. They created these shark detection buoys. Up until now, people have tried to identify potential sharks in the water through sonar and radar. And this is just using the image recognition technology on your phone. And so they're just looking out for sharks. Isn't that clever? And the moment the technology spots a shark, then it sends a satellite to the Coast Guards. And so here is Optus. Suddenly, its unprompted brand awareness scores increasing by 82%, and people in Australia, because it's the #3 brand, seeing it as being identified with technology. Really, really interesting. And here, I love this. Any dog owners? Does your dog run off from time to time? How? My daughter's brought home a terrier, a little runt. Anyway, and it's constantly disappearing. Any of you got a disappearing dog? They're all well behaved, lucky. In New Zealand, what Pedigree have done is that if you download the Found app, it's just a little button on your phone. The moment your dog disappears, you just push the red button, and in a 2-kilometer radius to you, it just takes over the Google display network. So every banner ad now has a picture of your dog in it to alert people in that radius to look out for Spot the filthy little mutt. You know, isn't that lovely? 3D, there's loads of 3D. We work with John Lewis to help them amplify Monty's Christmas with an indoor experience. So when we start putting all of this together with milk, what we need to try and do is something we've never done before, because that will inform the stuff that we're pretty sure works, which eventually will inform the stuff that we absolutely know works. So this is what Eric Schmidt talks about. He says to businesses that a really great way to make sure that you fuel success is to put budget aside to do things that you couldn't imagine doing last year. Do things you've never done. You know, just 10%, because they will then start to change the whole paradigm of the way you think and communicate. Okay, so what can we do with milk? We've got some great stuff here. We can rescue football. We've got farms and farmers. We've got the beginnings of some fantastic formats. There we go. Anti-sugar. Any thoughts? Does anything spring to mind immediately? Anyone?
British Farming League, like the Football League, but farms.
Yeah. Love it. So these farming football teams put farm against farm, something like that. It's great, or area against area, brilliant. And they have to wear wellies, even better. Fantastic. So football in wellies, played by farmers for a challenge cup, you know. Hey, now we've got the beginnings of content. Now we've got the beginnings of something kind of quite bonkers, and we're on a mission, because we're on a mission to save farming and rescue football from itself, because these people are better footballers and nicer human beings. You know, I love it. What do you think? Yeah? Who'd invest in that as a marketer? Would you say, yeah, all right, give that a couple of days? I think it's good. Now, da-dang. Shall I show you what I thought I might do, or what I did do when I first got there? I actually think a couple of your ideas are much better than the ideas I had, but I'm going to show you anyway. What I thought we might do is bring back the milk cup. So those of you of a certain age, you know it hasn't been played since 1993. It used to be played between the winners of the FA Cup and the winners of the league. And we're going to bring it back. And our core idea now is that we're going to organise a football match between boys, like the kids in the commercial. They've got to be under 13, say, and Accrington Stanley. And with any luck, Accrington Stanley are so shit that the boys will win. That's certainly what we want to happen. So that's it. We're going to run this football match, and we're going to bring back Ian Rush, who gloriously is now the director of schools football at Liverpool Football Club. For those of you who are young, does he mean anything to you? Yeah. He played for Liverpool, went to Juventus, didn't like the food, came back. He's kind of like the Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale? Yeah, almost, yeah. He's Welsh and very, very good. So we're going to bring him back, and he is going to recruit these boys through traditional media here, and he's going to recruit them through their dads. Here's the Top Gear website, which probably, on reflection, I should rethink. But it's Top Gear because what we want dads to do is to take video of their kids demonstrating their football skills and upload them to our hub. So this is curated content, user-generated content uploaded to our hub where people can go and compare their skills with other boys' skills, and parents can go too. There's an opportunity for traditional advertising or True View here. And the joke, Ian Rush says, if I don't drink enough milk, I won't be good enough to play in his team against Accrington Stanley. And the joke is, Ian Rush, who's he? Exactly. Hero Hub Help. Well, at our hub, as I said, we've now got all of this curated content going up there. And on mobile, it looks a bit like this. Dads upload it, they share it. And this is when you don't know what's going to happen next. You know, because it may well be that you end up with something a bit like this. At the back, you're going to have to turn the sound down, I think. Sweet. Right. It's lovely. His name is Hassan Afia. How many views has that had, do you think? How many? 70? 1 million? 70 million. Wow. Normally I get people going 100,000 and then I can build it up. But whoa, 70 million. No, 40 million, which I still think is pretty amazing. I mean, one of the things about it is that actually having a success on your hands like that requires probably more management than a disaster. Because what are you going to do now that people are sharing this around the world? So we would argue you'd create a war room, you'd see where it's getting traction, who's watching it, where, and then start running it as TrueView. You've now got fabulous hero content that's been created for you, and it's so much more compelling than the adverts. So driving people to our hub, hoping that more parents upload videos of their kids, so that Ian Rush can now select 180 kids in 60 boot camps, in 60 groups of 60 each for 3 boot camps, one in the North Midlands, one in the South. And there our boys go and they meet their coaches, Jamie Carragher and, what's his name? Stephen Gerrard, the wonderful Stephen Gerrard. And now we're creating content, because as well as having them as coaches, we're going to bring along STR Soccer Skills, who is this unbelievable YouTuber. He's got 1 million subscribers. Personally, I think he's a bit sad, you know, but what am I? Kids think he's absolutely magnificent. So STR Soccer Skills is going to come along, and he is now going to create content. So he's going to be the interface like this,
here. We've got the one and only
talking to Stephen Gerrard, Jamie Carragher, but creating coaching videos.
This YouTube video want to know how to play like Stephen Gerrard.
So now we learn to play like Stephen Gerrard with Stephen Gerrard. And now we're hoping that the numbers of people watching the videos is going up. We're hoping that the numbers of views for each of these videos is going up. And at the same time, while people are there at the hub, they're going to start looking at some of the help stuff. So in other words, I'm told that 58% of all school kids in Birmingham don't know that milk comes from cows. I think we should tell them. They might be horrified, of course. Oh, God, you know. But also here at the Help Centre, we're going to give teachers everything they need to know about farming, about the geography of farming, about the economics of farming, as well as scientific tests showing how Liverpool Football Club use milk as a recovery sports drink, you know, as well as diving into the protein stories behind it and the fact that all of the essential vitamins that a child needs as it's growing up are there. Anyway, then we select a team. Now we want them to watch the match, and we want them to watch it live on YouTube, so a new piece of communication. Enough of that. That was the only piece of video I could find. In my script, what we'd have is half-time between Liverpool and Crystal Palace, say, and then our boys, 16 of these boys, run onto the pitch, identical tracksuits. The security guys, instead of just hanging around looking pretty in their orange cagoules, in my version would try and get the kids off the pitch, but their skills are so incredibly fantastic that they just run rings around them and then melt away into the crowd. And it's one of those, was that for real? Was that a scam? What was happening? But we hope, really, really shareable to drive people to watch the live event. And then traditional media, this was a piece of direct mail, because we want journalists to go and watch the match itself up at Accrington Stanley. And so live on YouTube, well, why not? I mean, when Samsung launched their Gear Watch, 2 million people watched all 2 hours of the video live on YouTube. And 28 million people went that evening to watch. I mean, honestly, we've got to get 2 million people to watch this fantastic game live on YouTube, at least. So anyway, if I go back to yesteryear, that first commercial was me going, hello, mums, you interested in milk? You know, and I'm hoping that the mums in the room, you know, will remember the ad and the message behind it, not tomorrow, not even maybe the day after, but 3 or 4 days after. Whereas today, especially with programmatic, apart from anything, I know who you are. I know what your interests are. You know, we can start talking to you personally about this. I know if you're a dad with a 14-year-old boy or a mum with a boy who's into football. Impact. In the old days, it was a silver bullet. You know, but today, actually, it's much more of the shotgun approach. That's why I was throwing balls at you at the very beginning. Actually, the real potency of a message, an advertising message, is when you share it. And reach, there we go, the old TV regions have been replaced by social networks. And if we do go back, that original commercial, that little boy has grown up here to be Clive Rice, who is an actor currently appearing in EastEnders. But today you can change people's lives. Brands really have the fantastic opportunity through social media to be of enormous influence. You know, to get kids out there, playing football, doing stuff. And by the way, go back to integrity check, doing stuff that we know is good for them at a time when we're increasingly worried. Insight. Yeah, absolutely. We know that football is in decline, but here is the really amazing thing. When my planner came to me and said that the trending sport in the UK is dance. Whoa. Because then the first thing you do is go to YouTube and check it, and it turns out, yeah, you know, diversity. Da-dang. No, we've got a jam here. There we go. Do you remember them winning Britain's Got Talent? I mean, the other amazing thing is Billy Elliot is now currently showing on 23 stages around Britain. We've got Stomp on in the London West End, you know. And beyond them, we've got Jasmine Meakin. You know, this is Jasmine's YouTube channel. Here she is teaching. If you could turn the sound down, Eddie, thanks. Dan. Here's Jasmine teaching a really, really simple dance step. This is the least viewed of all of her videos with 1.5 million views, because most of her videos, you know, are collecting in the region of, you know, 2 million, 3 million. So dance really, really interests people. So innovation and immediacy, well, I thought, yeah, let's use Google Hangouts, because you can't take the copywriter out of me. We're going to get Beyoncé involved. When I was a copywriter in an ad agency, I used to get famous people to come in and do voiceovers just so I could get their signatures. Isn't that shallow, I know. But hey, we're going to get Beyoncé and the girls to come, and they are going to create a whole series of dance routines, which now our dance troupes can mash up to create their own routines. And by the way, going back to the guy who spotted it earlier, this is boys and girls, because girls, you need to drink milk to grow up healthy and strong too. So they're going to create their mashed up dance routines, video them, upload them, and then Jasmine and Beyoncé will then judge the winning troupe who will support her at the Royal Variety Show, for instance. And here's some heroin content. This is amazing. This is, again, in New York, where they're worried about obesity in schools. This. What a girl. I mean, the amazing thing is, you know, when I was the creative director of Ogilvy, if a creative team had brought me that piece of film, I would have gone, what are you doing? Did you see where the camera started? There was someone standing in the way. Didn't you think about asking them to move? Why is there only one camera, for God's sake? The lighting is shit. And why have you got all of those fat people in there? And therein is my journey over the last 10 years, from kind of traditional advertising creative director into somebody who has really genuinely embraced digital as being really the way to grow and support your brands. And at the heart of it all is that it's become a bit of a cliche, but it's absolutely true. Confucius said, "Tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember, but involve me and I will understand." And so my 7 rules of communication, the 7 I's, are all about how do we involve people so that they feel they want to be participants in your idea. Because if they do become participants, then they're also going to buy your products. Thank you very much for having me.